Good afternoon, year one, and welcome back to our second lesson all about spring. So, I'd like you to think about all the different signs of spring that you saw last lesson. Hi, year one, and welcome back. This is our second lesson all about signs of spring. Well done, because last week you found lots and lots of fantastic signs of spring. You spoke about the birds that you could see and hear. You spoke about the buds that were coming off of trees and plants. You talked about the shoots that were coming out of the ground. And some of you mentioned some of the things that are going to happen pretty soon in the next couple of weeks or month or so, and things like blossom on trees. What I've been noticing in the last couple of weeks is all the spring flowers that have started to come up. So today we're going to be looking at flowers. Before we start, we're just going to remind ourselves the 4 key parts to the plant. I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to either have a little think, or if you're working with somebody next to you, tell the person next to you, what are my arrows pointing to on my plant? Excellent, year one. So we've got, starting from the bottom, we've got the roots that are in the soil, and then we've got the stem that helps the plants grow nice and tall. We've got the leaves, and finally we have got the flower on top. Well done for remembering all those. So we're going to look at 4 different flowers, 3 of which I've already seen on my walks around London. So hopefully you might have started to see some of these flowers too. So the first one we're going to look at, I think, is probably one of the most famous spring flowers that we have here in the UK, and it's a daffodil. And how do we recognise the daffodil? Well, it's got a long stem with green leaves. It's usually got a yellow flower. Sometimes it's a little bit more orange, okay? It's got 6 petals, and then right in the centre it's got a very distinctive shape, which is like a trumpet. Can you see it looks a bit like a trumpet or a bell shape? And this is called a corona. And corona means crown. So it's got this crown bit in the middle, surrounded by 6 leaves with a long green stem and green leaves. And that is how you know that it's a daffodil. Fantastic. So we're going to move on to our next flower now. And I've seen some of these poking out. And these flowers are crocuses. Okay. And what I really like about crocuses is that they're really delicate, very, very pretty flowers. And their petals form to make a little cup shape. Can you see how the petals are formed all the way around in a little cup shape? And they usually come in the colours of kind of purple, yellows and whites. And sometimes there's a mixture. So you might get a purple and a white crocus. So they're quite low on the ground. They're not as tall as your daffodil. And the leaves look a bit like grass. They're quite thin and quite long, and they look like grass. So that's how we can tell about a crocus. Let's move on to our next flower. Oh, this is one of my favourites too. This is the snowdrop, and the snowdrops are one of the earliest spring flowers to come out. Actually, sometimes they even come out in January, so you might have seen snowdrops already. And what makes snowdrops really distinctive is on the outside they've got these beautiful pure white petals. So they're just white, nothing else. But on the inside they have smaller white petals that have green markings on them. All right, so you need to look really carefully at these snowdrops. So you've got white leaves on the outside, and then on the inside you've got white leaves with a little bit of green. And towards the bottom of the stem, you will see they've got lots of wide leaves. Okay, so not thin grassy leaves like the crocuses, but wide leaves that surround the stem. And finally, as you can see from this picture, they've got a drooping head. All right, so the snowdrops are looking like they're bent down to the ground. So they're a bit droopy, the snowdrops. Now, I thought I'd tell you about bluebells today, but I haven't seen any bluebells, and bluebells often come out later on in the spring, not until the end of April, beginning of May. So it's very unlikely that you would have seen any bluebells yet, but I thought we would talk about them so then you can recognise them when they do come out later on in spring. So they're called bluebells, and they're a kind of deep purple blue colour. They've got a bit of the that drops down, looks like a bell. That's why they're called bluebells. So they've got these bell-shaped flowers, and if you look really carefully, the tips of those flowers curl out, as you can see in this picture. Also, one of the distinctive features is that they only flower on one side of the stem, and the stem droops over. So again, a bit like the snowdrops, the bluebells look like they're looking down to the ground. So this is your activity today, Year 1. If you can, it would be amazing if you could go outside with an adult to see if you can see any spring flowers. If you can't get outside, that's absolutely fine. You can either use the video that you've just watched with me describing the flowers, or on your task sheet, I will put a link to a video of spring flowers. You could also do some of your own research on the internet and look up some spring flowers yourself. I'd then like you to draw a picture of your favourite spring flower, or if you were able to go outside, the ones you have seen outside. I'd like you to label your flower with the words root, stem, leaf and flower. And then I'd like you to explain how you know that your flower is that particular flower. So, for example, if you've chosen a daffodil, how did you know it was a daffodil? Okay, so here's an example of what I would like you to do. I would like you to do a drawing of either your favourite spring flower, or one that you have seen if you were able to get outside. I would then like you to label it. So as you can see on my picture, I've got flower, stem, leaf, and I had to draw some roots because I didn't have any roots, and roots. You might be able to label some other bits, for example, the petal. You might see some pollen inside your flower that you could label. And with the daffodil, you might be able to label the corona, which is that middle bit of the flower that looks like a trumpet. So Label everything that you can on the picture of your flower, and then I'd like you to write a few sentences to explain how do you know that it is in my case, daffodil. So I have written, the flower is made up of a trumpet shape called a corona, which in brackets I've written crown because that's what it means, which is in the middle. The corona is surrounded by 6 yellow petals. A daffodil has a long stem and green leaves. So we talked about 4 different types of flowers today. So if you would like to do more than one picture and explanation, then you definitely can, particularly if you're able to go outside and see lots of different flowers for yourself. You might have a different favourite spring flower, or you might go outside and see one that we haven't talked about today. That is also fine. You need to draw a picture of it, label it, and explain how you know what flower it is. Fantastic, Year 1. Now this is our last online lesson, which means I get to meet you all next week. I am so excited to see you all back in school. Right, take care and see you next week. Bye.